provided a very, very... Obviously, it's a state matter. I just want to come to a question here because this gentleman's been waiting a while.
I just want to sort of probably... My name's Mark. I'm sort of just in the community, basically. But I probably want to elaborate on everything that's been said here with even youth suicide. But I want to also touch on, even with the childcare, everything, and the male suicide rates, etc., in single father and single mother things, and to do with the Child Support Agency and all the thing, and family law courts. I think at the moment the family law court's like a $14 billion a year industry, and they're going on about childcare and stuff like that, and making ludicrous suggestions of a grandparent going to get a certificate to look after grandkids when they can sit there and, I mean, for Christ's sake, they raised us, they raised everyone else. Like, why would they need a certificate? We've got people that are outspoken about domestic violence against women, which I certainly don't condone, and I agree it's a bad thing. No death like that should happen at all. But then you see that spoken about so much, but yet there's 5 to 7 suicides a day in Australia with men alone. That's like 2,000 odd people a year that are suiciding, and even with the fly-in, fly-outs and everything like that, depressing. I mean, even the fathers that, like, we want to see our kids too. Why can't we look after them as well? And like, there needs to be a whole system to stop this killing of people. It's the policies and your procedures, the legislators, everything that's in place is not working.
What is the solution?
Well, there's been heaps of things. I mean, they're doing an inquiry at the moment into Child Support Agency, but I don't particularly think that's going to achieve anything. I don't think they're going to do anything when the government's getting 14, or the family law is making $14 billion odd a year out of people's misery.
Senator Scully, yes.
First of all, I have this conversation with us on a weekly basis, mostly with males. Tragically, it's the greatest killer of Australian males under 45, that they take their own lives. And those issues that you're talking around are very, very important issues. I think there's a couple of issues we need to deal with. The issue about mental health, the programs we have in terms of the interventions in mental health, how we support people with mental health, and suicide prevention programs more generally. There's around 830 million invested in that area. Tragically, I found out the other day that of those ones that I'm personally interested in a sense responsible for, because they're Indigenous programs, there wasn't any one, not a single one has been peer assessed, the particular program. And so, as a parliamentarian arriving saying, and a lot of people say, well, why are you cutting it, or why are you... I mean, the real question is, we don't really know what we're doing. We just investing more money might make us all feel better. And might make you all feel better about us. But we do need to have a more thorough process. So there is a national body, and I've just provided $1 million to just go through these and actually go through and actually peer assess. We've got to make some investments in what we're doing. We can't just keep doing the same thing because the largest killer of under 45 in males hasn't stopped. So whatever we're doing just simply isn't working. I think we need to acknowledge that. We need to ensure that, as those questions that earlier came from the back of the room, that we need to ensure that we are having not only world's best practice, but that's where we're investing. And I suspect that the absolute plethora of programs that have grown organically, it appears to be over a long period of time. There are some that we know are working better than others, but you can't run on gut feeling. So I think this assessment, in mind, it's only $1 million, and out of 800 million, we should be doing much more of this. So the first thing is, we are absolutely, probably as a Parliament, united behind getting smarter about this. So I think the first thing is to make sure that we have some assessment. We use international benchmarks. We need evidence-based process to ensure that we are delivering the very best services. In terms of the remainder of your question, conversation, it is tragic, and I don't think the answer is necessarily in governments. It's amongst all of us. It's a function of an illness in society. I come from a family who my dad basically got old before Mum got sick of him and died before Mum got sick of him, and that doesn't happen often. but you know, I'm separated. I've got 3 kids. You know, the society is changing. There's a lot more pressures on society. We talked about double incomes. A lot more pressure, you know, because we put ourselves into debt, and so there's a whole range more pressures, you know, in life for everyone. But in terms of the unfairness that men particularly feel about their circumstances, we've had a number of inquiries, and I have to say finding that balance is a very difficult one. But and there is a great deal of feeling that I get from my male constituents who come to say, listen, this is and often people who are now suffering significant mental health issues as a consequence of being kept from being near their children and all these sort of processes.
Well, we're not getting any response, mate. I've got a page that's dedicated to a fairer system that, in one way, we're all talking about it and getting help and opinions, but, mate, we've been to MPs, we've been to solicitors, we've been to senators, everything, and no one wants to touch this area.
Look, I acknowledge the sensitive. I just don't think it's true to say that we won't touch this area. Kay Hull had
no one's getting back to us.
You know, Kay Hull was somebody who did an incredibly large amount of work. It was a cross-parliament, a joint standing committee, and it did a fantastic amount of work. Now, significant adjustments were made in the system on both sides. But look, I think that it's a very tragic area. But I think most parliamentarians, when you get into the business, because if you say, well, what are you going to do? If you make a change, there's a response and there's a consequence. And generally speaking, I believe that the system is where it should be. If it gets shifted, the consequences invariably have an impact on the children. And where we start in the system, we have to protect the children first and the best interest of the children. That's where everybody comes from in this. And sadly, there are on both sides. From my perspective, possibly more so than men, because they're the bulk of the constituency that feel they're not getting the right deal. But this is an area that we're constantly looking at. But at the moment, I think they do have the balance right. And sadly, the reflection is for many of my constituents, they wouldn't reflect that. But that's where we're up to, because I think the decisions are all made quite rightly on the basis of the benefit to ensure that the children, in fact, are getting the best deal out of this. And look, it's a Solomon area, and I think it's a very hard area to work in, but I'm not so sure that there's any perfect answer in that area. But this is a system probably every 5 to 7 years. It's an area of such significance that Parliament will have another inquiry and make some other adjustments to it. But as I said, the last one was about 7 years ago with Kay Hull, and there was a significant inquiry, a massive inquiry. It took a bit over a year to do, and there was some significant changes. As you said, not changes that are making me entirely happy, but we're continuing to review the process.
Thanks for that. Ross, get up, please. We'll see you where from.
Yeah, I'm Ross. From Emerald, sort of lived out west and stuff like that. And sort of, I listen to the ABC radio, and a while back I heard of a story that